So as you know, today's webinar is about immigration and peace building. Before we dwell into the topic, we will begin with an activity. So the activity is called paper folding. So what I need from you all is a sheet, a blank sheet, please. So a piece of paper, yes, a blank sheet will be really helpful for this activity. Should I do the same? All right. Before we do the activity, I'd like to highlight some points, provide some insight about activity. So, you know, sometimes in life we have conflict situations, and in these conflict situations, oftentimes we tend to think that we have our own truth, and that truth is the one and only one. So, departing from this point, we might reject other people's perspectives and see our own truth as central stage. So with this activity, we will try to see multiple perspectives and see how it works. So the first, so I'm going to give the instructions. Before I give the instructions, I want everybody to close their eyes and just listen to me. But I'm going to keep my eyes open. All right, we're going to close our eyes, and then I'm going to give the instructions. All right, the first step is fold the paper in half. And do not open your eyes. Fold the paper in half. Now, fold the paper in half again. All right.
Shall we close our eyes now?
Excuse me?
Shall we close our eyes now?
All throughout the activity, it will be closed. Don't open until I tell you.
Okay.
All right. So we folded it. Now, turn the paper upside down. Turn the paper upside down. All right. Oh, apologies. My apologies. There was one step. Okay, before turning the paper upside down, I'm sorry, back to it. Okay, so we folded, the first step was fold the paper in half and then fold the paper in half again. Now, tear the bottom right corner. Tear off the right bottom corner. Tear off the right bottom corner. Sağ köşeyi, alt sağ köşeyi yırtın. And now, if you are done, turn the paper upside down. All right. Okay, now tear the other bottom right corner. Tear off the other right bottom corner. Let me just check if everybody's done. All right. Now open your eyes. Okay, hold your papers over your head so that we can see who has what. Open your papers, open your sheet. Okay, everyone. Nazan, is yours is very different. Okay. Yes. Dennis, can you just hold a little bit up? All right. Oh, so Cutter, something very different. And I see, so it looks like we all have something very, very different. So yeah. The question is, like, I gave the same instruction, though I was a little confused at the beginning, but then I corrected myself. So the instruction was the same for everyone, but when we look at our sheets, we have different kind of torn parts. Yes. Why is that? So the question is, why do we have something like this?
Although the instructions are the same, we construct the knowledge, we construct the instructions differently. So we perceive the knowledge differently. So the results will be differently as well.
All right. So we perceive things differently because we have constructed our knowledge differently. Good point. Any more comments or ideas about that? All right. So definitely, because we have our own knowledge that we have built over the course of time through our experiences, and then building on that knowledge, we try to perceive the world that we face somehow. And that's why we have different perspectives. So my next question is, how does that activity relates to our webinar? Dennis, do you mind? Yes, peace building and immigration, and the link between this webinar, the topic of that webinar, and also the activity.
May I start?
Please.
Okay, most probably when we become teachers or as teacher candidates, we will see lots of students from different backgrounds, different needs, different expectations, and we should have the necessary skills and knowledge to teach and give response to these kinds of students. So maybe this paper shows us different types of learners, different various background knowledge. So maybe we can relate this with our webinar. And immigration and peace building is one of them.
All right. Yeah. Any more comments on that? Folks, do we have more comments? So what is the connection between that activity and our webinar, the focus of our webinar? So who else? I mean, we have a lot of refugees in our country. And do you know which countries they come from?
Syria.
Syria, what else? Say it loudly, somebody said it, I guess.
Iraq.
Iraq.
Arabic.
Saudi Arabia, you mean? All right, so we have a lot of people from different nationalities, from different countries. So people from different walks of life. So when they come into that community, it is very likely that they will have different perspectives. Even if they are given a single situation which has the same focus, but our approach, our attitudes will definitely be different. That is why that activity was given as a kind of initial activity, kind of lay the ground for this webinar. All right, so Dennis, do you mind? So we have some objectives in this webinar. So the first objective is to introduce student teachers, key terms and concepts related to immigration and peace building. So when we talk about immigration and peace building, there are some terms that we have to get familiarized with, such as refugee, migrant, to seek an asylum. So these are some important terms that we should know before we dwell into the core of the webinar. So our next objective is to enable you, student teachers, to apply peace building pedagogy in the language classroom. So obviously, when you become a teacher, even when you go to your practicum sites, you have students from different nationalities, from different countries, like a lot of Syrian students, or students from Iraq, Afghanistan. So they're all in the same context, in the same class, and then you have to address these students. Sometimes that could be very challenging. So with language, building language pedagogy, you will somehow try to address the needs of these students and also build a peaceful atmosphere in the classroom to bring all the voices. All right, and to enable you to cultivate resilience in your students coming from different sociocultural backgrounds. So do you know what resilience is? All right, we will talk about that just to give a glimpse into that. So sometimes your students might have gone through some really bad experiences, and now they're in the process of recovering and getting empowered again. So resilience is basically the recovery of recovery after something shocking, after something bad. So you somehow help your students to build or cultivate resilience through teaching them with appropriate or improper activities and tasks, you know, pedagogy, blah, blah stuff. All right.
Also, resilience is, think about resilience as like somebody coming from really poor conditions, maybe like socioeconomically, or in the case of like refugees in Turkey, like having no resources, no like, you know, family like support, and like going through like, you know, like trauma and etc., but still having the power. So that power is actually resilience to continue, to persevere, to like, you know, even despite those difficulties, having that potential to achieve their best. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ines, for the contribution. And also, we aim to enable you to provide differentiated instruction in the language classroom. So when you go into your classrooms, you will have students, as I said before, from different walks of life. They will come into the classroom with different cultural repertoire, and it is important that you address these students in a differentiated way, so that you can help them out to kind of do their best in the classroom. All right. So the first question, what does it mean to be a refugee? So I'd like to hear first your answers, and then we're going to watch a video, and hopefully we will have a deeper understanding of becoming a refugee, and also some terms related to immigration and peace building. But before that video, I'd like to hear some responses from you. What does it mean to be a refugee?
May I start?
Please.
Okay, refugee for me, it means someone or somebody who comes from another country, but he or she comes illegally, without any permission, official permission.
Okay. We will see.
Maybe because of the wars, difficulties in their own countries, they have to move another country.
Okay, that makes sense. Ari, I guess you were kind of going to say something as well.
Yes, someone who's away from his home country and not be able to go back because of war and other crises.
All right, yeah. Any more responses?
They are forced to go abroad since they are facing with difficult situations in their own country.
Yes.
All right, yeah. So basically you are all right. So obviously these people leave their country because of some hardship they experience or they go through in their country, that the reasons could be different, but we're going to see more in the video.
Yeah.
Around the globe, there are approximately 60 million people who have been forced to leave their homes to escape war, violence, and persecution. The majority of them have become internally displaced persons, which means they have fled their homes but are still within their own countries. Others have crossed a border and sought shelter outside of their own countries. They are commonly referred to as refugees. But what exactly does that term mean? The world has known refugees for millennia, but the modern definition was drafted in the UN's 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees in response to mass persecutions and displacements of the Second World War. It defines a refugee as someone who is outside their country of nationality and is unable to return to their home country because of well-founded fears of being persecuted. That persecution may be due to their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion, and is often related to war and violence. Today, roughly half the world's refugees are children, some of them unaccompanied by an adult, a situation that makes them especially vulnerable to child labor or sexual exploitation. Each refugee's story is different, and many must undergo dangerous journeys with uncertain outcomes. But before we get to what their journeys involve, let's clear one thing up. There's a lot of confusion regarding the difference between the terms migrant and refugee. Migrants usually refers to people who leave their country for reasons not related to persecution, such as searching for better economic opportunities or leaving drought-stricken areas in search of better circumstances. There are many people around the world who have been displaced because of natural disasters, food insecurities, and other hardships. But international law, rightly or wrongly, only recognizes those fleeing conflict and violence as refugees. So what happens when someone flees their country? Most refugee journeys are long and perilous, with limited access to shelter, water, or food. Since the departure can be sudden and unexpected, belongings might be left behind. And people who are evading conflict often do not have the required documents like visas to board airplanes and legally enter other countries. Financial and political factors can also prevent them from traveling by standard routes. This means they can usually only travel by land or sea and may need to entrust their lives to smugglers to help them cross borders. Whereas some people seek safety with their families, others attempt passage alone and leave their loved ones behind with the hopes of being reunited later. This separation can be traumatic and unbearably long. While more than half the world's refugees are in cities, sometimes the first stop for a person fleeing conflict is a refugee camp, usually run by the United Nations Refugee Agency or local governments. Refugee camps are intended to be temporary structures, offering short-term shelter until inhabitants can safely return home, be integrated to the host country, or resettle in another country. But resettlement and long-term integration options are often limited. So many refugees are left with no choice but to remain in camps for years and sometimes even decades. Once in a new country, the first legal step for a displaced person is to apply for asylum. At this point, they're an asylum seeker and not officially recognized as a refugee until the application has been accepted. While countries by and large agree on one definition of refugee, every host country is responsible for examining all requests for asylum and deciding whether applicants can be granted the status of refugee. Different countries' guidelines can vary substantially. Host countries have several duties towards people they have recognized as refugees, like the guarantee of a minimum standard of treatment and non-discrimination. The most basic obligation towards refugees is non-refoulement, a principle preventing a nation from sending an individual to a country where their life and freedom are threatened. In reality, however, refugees are frequently the victims of inconsistent and discriminatory treatment. They are increasingly obliged to rebuild their lives in the face of xenophobia and racism. And all too often, they aren't permitted to enter the workforce and are fully dependent on humanitarian aid. In addition, far too many refugee children are out of school due to lack of funding for education programs. If you go back in your own family history, chances are you will discover that at a certain point, your ancestors were forced from their homes, either escaping a war or fleeing discrimination and persecution. It would be good of us to remember their stories when we hear of refugees currently displaced, searching for a new home.
That was so traumatic. So regarding the video, I have some questions. So the first question is, why do people escape or flee from their own country or their homeland? What are some reasons according to the video?
According to the video, maybe economic situations for searching of better lives. Sometimes their own countries could not afford for a better way of living, so they have to migrate another country. Sometimes because of wars and persecution, it says they have to move another country. Primarily to class. It mentions, for example, first one is refugee, And the second one is migrant. Migrant, not just because of wars, but searching for better lives. But refugee because of the persecution and wars.
Thank
So
you.
because of that, maybe they.
Yeah. So basically, it says people have different reasons to leave or to escape from their own country. The reasons are varied. So it could be war, violence, persecution, economic reasons, or drought, stricken areas. So these are some basic reasons why people escape from their country. But when it comes to differentiating between a migrant and a refugee, the reasons, I mean, how they are classified or how they are referred, because of, the reasons for this is different. So oftentimes, people who leave their country because of economic reasons or drought, blah, blah, so they are called migrants. But a refugee leaves their country because of persecution. That could be war, violence, or they could experience discrimination because of their religion, because of their beliefs, because of their class. There are different reasons for that.
Yes.
So the next question, we have a lot of refugees, and thinking of these refugees, the majority is consisted of a group of people. Who are these?
Syrian.
I mean, not nationality. So we have, according to UN, the UN, it says there are 60 million refugees all over the world. So the majority consists of a particular age group. Who are they?
Children.
Young generation.
Yes, they are children. And these children are often experience child labor and sexual exploitation. So they experience a lot of troubles there. Okay, so we can move on to the statistics provided by the United Nations. So it says there are about 69 million people forcibly displaced around all over the world. And of these people, 40 million are internally displaced. And again, more than 25 million people are refugees, and more than 3 million are, they seek for asylum in some countries to be a refugee. So the initial step to be a refugee is to apply for asylum, and then when you are granted the asylum, you become the refugee. So all over the world, there are more than 3 million people who seek for asylum. Okay. And when we consider where these people live, 80% of them live in the developing countries, like Islamic Republic of Iran, Lebanon, Pakistan, Uganda, and Turkey. And people, considering the countries they escaped from, these include South Sudan, Afghanistan, Syria. So these are the three major countries from which people escape because of persecution.
I just want to add something, because I think in Turkey, like, people are not aware of the severity of the situation, but like Turkey has the country that hosts the most number of refugees in the world. Like, we have 3.5 million Syrian refugees, and that's the highest, like, throughout the world. So this is, and we are prepared. Like, how often do you talk about these issues in your classes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're prepared to talk about, like immigration or peace building, or like, how to address these students' needs. Why, we are doing this webinar.
Yeah. So in the next slide, we have more figures indeed. So it says like top 10 countries of origin in terms of the countries from which people escape. Again, these are Syria, Afghanistan, and South Sudan, as I mentioned in the previous slide. And the hosting countries are Turkey, as Deniz has mentioned, 3.5 million. That's the official number, I guess, but the unofficial number is, like they say, it's about 5 million. So, which means we have...
These numbers are the numbers that are under the purview of United Nations.
Right.
Because, like, you know, when somebody applies to be an asylum seeker, United Nations actually gets in charge. So it's not Turkey that's in charge of these people. It's like they are under the purview of United Nations. So these are the numbers that are under the purview of UNHCR. So like we don't know the unofficial number.
Right. So when they enter the country, they are directly taken to Ankara, the capital city, and there is an office there, is the Directorate of Migration Office, I guess. And in this office, they have people from the United Nations, and also people, local people, Turkish people. So they document these people. And if they, enter the country without any notice, then they are not documented.
One thing though, so once they enter the country, they don't go to Ankara immediately. They wait in these like facilities near the border, and that might take like months for them to get a chance to actually get their papers sorted. So they live in these like refugee camps for months or years.
Thank you, Eunice. Okay, so again, in terms of in terms of countries hosting the refugees, we have Turkey, Pakistan, and Uganda. So also Lebanon, Bangladesh, Jordan, Sudan. So these are some of the other countries that host about the majority of the countries that host the majority of refugees all over the world. Okay, so I have some more questions. These will be some warm-up questions for you. So why do we discuss immigration and peace building in our webinar? What is the importance of that topic, or the relationship of that topic to to social justice and also English language teaching? Why do we discuss it?
Okay, may I start?
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so this project's aim, one of the aims of this project is make learning equal for everyone. Everyone should have the same opportunity to learn. This is for me, this is one of the aims of the project. So if we ignore the students who are migrants or refugees, we could not achieve the goals, actually. Yes. So we need to sustainable and equal education for everyone, for every child. Right. So this is also the goal of this project for me.
Yeah, thank you. Any more comments on the question?
Can I add something?
Of course.
We know that refugee problem is a trend topic, so also we should respect each other while we are living with different people from different countries and cultures. Mm-hmm. So it is a topic of social justice, I think, respect.
Right. Any more comments? Okay. So why is language instruction important for immigrants? Just put yourself into their shoes. Why is it important?
To communicate. If they couldn't, if they couldn't be taught well, the language, I mean, they couldn't communicate or convey their opinions or ideas, so they most probably feel isolated, mm-hmm. and they migrate another country.
All right, to express themselves, to meet their needs, and in order not to feel isolated, they need to learn the language. So that's why they need language instruction. Yeah. Any more comments on the question?
Can I add something?
Please.
Also, I think that to feel insecurity, because while people are communicating, they feel insecurity. So we need to give some good instructions to them, so mm-hmm. they will feel insecurity.
All right. So some security reasons. Basically, I guess you depart from the psychological perspective.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so we have a lot of reasons why these people need language instruction. So the next question, when we say language instruction,
Yeah.
which language are we referring to? Their mother tongue, I mean the mother tongue of refugee people? Is it English, or is it the local language of the country, hosting country? Like we have a lot of Syrian, Iraqi, and Afghani people. So in our country, so are they going to learn Turkish or their own language or English?
I think we should give instructions in their own language because they will feel easy to communicate while we are trying to communicate with them.
Burak, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Okay, think about this issue. You teach in a classroom which includes 40 students, for example, and 25 or 30 of them are Turkish, and approximately 10 of them are Syrian. So what about this? Will you teach Turkish, English, or
Their mother tongue.
Syrian?
Exactly,
their mother tongue.
exactly in English. I will teach in English, but when they need, I should give some instructions in their own language because they will feel ease thanks to this way. So I can give some little instructions in their own language. It will be better, I think.
So Farid, Burak, just to give you an example, in the first semester, I was observing 3 different students in 3 different classrooms. And in these classrooms, there were Syrian students, Afghan students, so Iraqi students. There are a lot of students from different language and cultural backgrounds, and the teacher did not know their language. So in such a context, which language would it be?
Could you repeat it?
Of course, in the first semester,
Thank you.
I was observing 3 different students. They were placed in different grade levels. So one of them was 2nd grade, the other was 3rd grade, and the last one was 4th grade student. All right. So in each of these classes, there were students from Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. So, and the 3 instructors teaching these students did not know the language of these students. So how would you expect a teacher not knowing the language of these students to provide instruction in the mother tongue of these students?
Actually, I think that we know that students will learn something, but also teachers can learn something. So we can make some research about their own language. So we can learn some little words to give little informations or instructions. It's not hard, I think.
All right. Any different perspectives, comments?
May I add something?
Please.
Okay, last year I had a Syrian or Iraqi girl, like third grade students, and her Turkish was really bad. And the school met me to teach her English. I was like, okay, I can, but she can't even understand me in Turkish. How can I teach English to her? And luckily, I have an Arabian friend here in the university. I went with him like 3 or 4 months to her to lessons. It's not her fault, or it's not our fault. It's the fault of the government. You just can't accept the whole refugees without teaching them the language of the country. Okay, they are coming, but they don't know the language, they don't know the culture. How they are expecting us to communicate with them?
Right. I'm just building on what you have said. So I was observing the 3rd grade student, and it was about 2 weeks after my observation. Then all of a sudden, the next week, there was an Afghan student. So they have just arrived in Sinop, and the student was placed in the 3rd grade. and she knew no Turkish, no one single word in Turkish. I asked her her name, and she couldn't understand my question. I spoke very slowly, just 2 or 3 words included in the question, and she couldn't understand. And her Afghan friend translated the question, and then she said it in her mother tongue, and then the Afghan student translated it into English, into Turkish. So basically, when these students are accepted to school, they receive no language education. They're immediately placed in the grade level, in the level in which they left their own country. So that student was aged 9, I guess, and she had some instruction back in her country, but she had no document certifying that she was a 3rd grade student. And when she went to the ministry, the provincial ministry of education here in Sinop, so she was asked her age, and her family told that she was 9 years old, and then she was placed in the 3rd grade. And I asked if this was real, and the instructor in the school said that it was real. And she was totally lost in the classroom because she could not understand even a single word because she didn't know. So it is very likely that you will face the same situation when you become English language teachers.
What do you suggest here?
How are we going to teach these students, and how are we going to help these students? So imagine you might have an Afghan student, and any of you, do you know the language spoken in Afghanistan? Indeed, I don't know.
So we cannot learn in a short.
Excuse me?
We cannot learn in a short time a different language.
Yeah, it takes time, but still we can do. As Greg said, we can do something. But what we will do will help kind of solve the problem. I mean, at the whole facets of the problem, that's the question that we need to kind of bear in mind and seek an answer in the long run. Wow, okay, I guess we can move on.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, please.
What do you suggest we do here, though? You know, it's not planned action. You know, it's not like, you know, we know in advance that they are going to be here, that, so we get prepared to learn their language or start teaching them the language of the new world. Obviously, you know, it might take them for years to learn a new language to in order to transition to or settle in a new country. So it would have been then unfair. I mean, it would be unfair also to wait. I mean, I understand that it's also problematic that we place them in classrooms where they're lost, but they might be outside of the classroom waiting for years and still be lost, you know? So it's like, you know, lose-lose, you know, it's not like
this way. Like the solution to my idea, it could be like we can provide before accepting these students to like this. I mean, the example that I provided, that is a traumatic situation for that student because she was totally isolated. And I believe she could have been provided language instruction for some time and then be placed in the mainstream education. Otherwise, it would take her a lot of time. I mean, she will experience a lot of peer pressure because the students in the classroom might not understand her situation. And oftentimes what I observed, they were not aware of her situation. She was alone. She was sitting alone in the desk at the very back row. And the teacher was kind of struggling to help her out. And when I talked to the teacher, I mean, he said, well, I'm not okay with this situation. I mean, before being accepted to that classroom, she must have been provided some, I mean, she should have been provided some language instruction. And then I'm totally okay, she's in my class. But now I'm in the 3rd grade and I have about 24 students and she's a 25th. So how am I going to help her when I have that many students in my classroom? Am I going to teach her Turkish, or am I going to follow the regular curriculum for the other students? That is the problematic part. So currently what I see, to my opinion, I mean, you don't have to agree with me, of course, but some language instruction is a must for these students.
May
And,
I add?
now, of course, this year in Sinop, they started something. So what they started is, I mean, they did a kind of placement proficiency test of Turkish for the for the refugee students, and then students who scored below the boundary that I don't know yet. So these students were kind of taken to another school, and they were provided. They will be provided some language instruction, and then they will go back to their regular class. I don't know. You might have some. You might not be okay with that, but seeing the experience, issue during my observation, I feel and I believe that something should be done immediately. Otherwise, these students experience a lot of problems in the classroom. They're totally alone, occupying the back row seats. And in each class, there were about 7 or 9 students. Believe me, 7 or 9 students. They were from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan.
Yes.
Deniz, would you like to add something at this point?
Nazam was going to say something, so I want to speak first.
Deepest apologies.
Mine is short. Actually, this issue. May I go?
Please.
Okay. Actually, this issue maybe depend on where you are teaching. For example, you are teaching in an institution where every kind of opportunity is provided. So if you have this kind of students, you can also do some extracurricular activities. You can collect these students and teach them and meet their needs. But for example, if you are teaching in an institution where such kind of opportunities are not provided, so it is hard to give response to these kinds of students. Am I clear?
Yeah, sure. So indeed, in that school, they had extracurricular classes of Turkish and mathematics, but the program of these courses, the curriculum was oriented for all the students, basically for Turkish, local students. And when I talked to the instructor about that, he said, indeed, that extracurricular courses, they do not, after school courses do not meet their needs, because in these classes, we have a lot of Turkish students and these students all together. And what we do in the classroom do not address their needs. So he added that they certainly need something different.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
I want to respond to Servet Hoca and maybe comment on everything that you have said. First of all, the problem is big. Adnan is right. What happens, from what I have seen, is that these students, they are placed into grades.
Deniz, do you mind just, I do not want to interrupt you, but I believe the point that I would like to say is very important. Before the observation, I thought that they receive some language instruction and then they are placed in the school. But then I learned, no, they're immediately placed, if they're 4th grade, immediately in the 4th grade. If 3rd grade, they're immediately in the 3rd grade.
Yeah.
Please.
And they pass regardless of the fact that they fail in their exams.
Right.
So the Ministry of Education, at the end of the year, passes them, moves them on to the next grade, but they don't really learn anything. So that's really problematic. At the end of the high school, they get a degree. It's, yeah. So the other problem is that we think Turkey is a monolingual country, and we assume that the other countries are also monolingual, but in Afghanistan, there are so many languages spoken. So it's not realistic for our teachers to learn all the varieties. So I don't think that's an option. We cannot, maybe there can be teachers who are specialized in different languages and they can provide support, but we are ages behind in terms of multilingual education, and that's what the government should work on. because as Fahri said, like, this is not the teacher's fault. This is not the refugees' fault either. The government, it's not the government's fault either, because the government cannot turn their backs to that. We need to, you know, we need to accept these people, but like we need to also, like, you know, find ways to accommodate them. So we cannot just like open our doors, welcome everybody, and then let them be. Like, you have a responsibility. And the government is failing in that sense, because we are not educating the teachers to prepare for this challenge. Like, the teachers don't know anything. So like, of course the question will be, am I supposed to learn Arabic to address their needs? No, like, there are other ways. So we are actually working on this here in California. I have another project that I'm doing with the Migrant Education Office here in Monterey. And the Migrant Education Office is different because here migrants, farm worker kids, so kind of like our sezonluk işçi, you know, status. But they are also immigrants. So they are immigrants. They are mostly from Mexico and other countries. But they also move within the states following the crop season, because they go wherever the crop season. So the migrant student education, they provide support for the migrant students, and they have migrant resource teachers who travel to like different school districts. They, you know, work with students one-on-one. They have like, you know, summer camps. They have like weekend activities. So they provide support to this group of learners. And some people might say, like, why are we, you know, giving our tax money to migrant students? They are here illegally, but like it doesn't work that way. If they are here, you're responsible. You need to provide the best education possible to meet their needs. Like, you know, you cannot say, yeah, I don't care. So yes, tomorrow actually we have, so as part of the project, we are working on this issue because although most of them come from Mexico, they don't speak Spanish. They speak Mixteco. Have you ever heard Mixteco? No, right? It's one of the indigenous languages. So that's the majority of the majority language for the migrant students these days. And the teachers, when we are like, what we want to do, like what you want to learn in these workshops, they're like, oh, we want to learn Mixteco. Like, I cannot teach you Mixteco. Like, I don't speak Mixteco. That's not the idea. That's like, the idea is that how do you find ways to address these students' needs when we don't know when we don't share their culture, when we don't share their language. Yeah. So we don't talk about it in our workshops, but maybe like we can for next year. So tomorrow we'll be talking about culturally responsive pedagogy. How can we address their needs by like, you know, drawing from, because like these students, they might not be speaking Turkish, but like, it's not that they don't know anything. They know things. They know things that you don't know. So you need to find those areas that they can, you know, like share something, talk about. It's like, you know, it's
to be part of the system.
Just like it's very unfair.
Yeah. Thank you, Dennis, for the contribution. So I also had to interview with parents, with the instructors, and I talked to 3 instructors, and one very important point highlighted by the instructors was they didn't know how to teach these students. They were indeed, they had a teaching background of about 20 years or 22, 25 years. So, but they said, we have never faced something like this. Our students used to be Turkish now. For the last 1 decade, I will say, they said they have a lot of refugees. Over the course of time, they learned something through their own experience, not by some kind of in-service training to teach these students. All right, I guess we can go on. So, role of language learning. Language learning activities can serve as a basis for developing individual and community resilience. So, which means our activities, the activities that we design in the, that we implement in the classroom can help these students to find some room and then again feel empowered and be part of the bigger community, and also kind of feel comfortable in the community. And also ensuring dignity, self-sufficiency, and life skills. As Dennis said, well, obviously they have some different language background, but it is important for us to have the awareness that they have something. They are not empty blanks and empty slates. So it is important that we somehow provide some room or spare some room for these students to bring these life skills and building on these life skills to be part of the community. And also increase refugee integration and protection. So sometimes these students might feel really isolated and they might experience a lot of peer pressure. So through building different activities or designing different activities, we can have this harmony and peace in the classroom. And then, the local students can somehow provide shelter and protection for these students. And also forging new social networks and interaction with the wider community. So language instruction can kind of lay the groundwork for all these things. If we, of course, implement a culturally responsive pedagogy, that's very important. And also a pedagogy that would help these students to find voice in the classroom. And it can strengthen opportunities to build greater social cohesion. Of course, if we achieve such things in our classrooms, obviously at the end of the day, we will have peace, not only in the classroom, but also in the context outside of the classroom.
Okay.
So let's focus on Turkey. So what is the situation in Turkey? In Turkey, from in K-12 education, the medium of instruction is Turkish. In high school, higher education, obviously universities, is Turkish and English, because we have universities. The majority of universities teach in Turkish, and some universities which use English as medium of instruction, like Bosphorus University, Bilkent, ODTÜ, blah blah. They have English as a medium of instruction, and for these students, nothing. All right. So there are about 603,000 students in refugee students in I'm horrible at numbers, by the way. Refugee students in Turkey, and 430,000 of them are out of school. So they don't go to school. That is, I would say that's really horrible. And the enrollment rate is less than 30%. So like out of 100, 30% of them go to school. And when it comes to higher education, basically university education, that percentage goes even lower. So we have far less students in universities, refugee students. So in Turkey, there are some spaces where we need to meet students' needs. So there's a need for children to learn Turkish to access formal education, as well as improve the Arabic literacy rates of Syrian children. Just to refer back to the example that I provided, so two of the students, the second grade and third grade students, they could speak and understand Arabic, but they had no literacy in Arabic language. And the third grade student did not want to learn Arabic literacy because she had this kind of reaction. And when I talked to her, his mother, she said, I'm trying to convince him to learn Arabic literacy as well. And she said they were planning to teach him Arabic literacy over the summer holiday. And I asked them how. She said, I don't know, but I'm going to find a way. All right. So the next need there should be emphasis on the role of English language learning in giving an international voice for Syrians inside and outside the country. So obviously English is the lingua franca of the world in today's world, and we're going to be English language teachers in our classrooms. We can teach English to these students, I mean refugee students, and through English they can voice their needs and they can help the world. I mean, they can make their voice heard by the whole world. Also, there is a need for programs that teach Turkish in a communicative way for everyday life and to access public services, training, and employment. Obviously, these students live in Turkey. So when they leave the classroom, it is again Turkish language. So when they go to bazaar, when they go to hospital, go to any place, they will need Turkish because the people in these small contexts, they use Turkish. So these students need the command of that language to be able to meet their needs. So the difficulty parents have in communicating with the school, well, in the example that I provided, there were 3 families and none of them could speak Turkish. So when they went to do this school and family meeting, they would oftentimes avoid going. Instead, they would send their elder children, and then they will be the parents of their youngers, and then listen to the instructor, the teacher, and take notes. And then when they go back home, they would share the notes with their parents in Arabic. That was really kind of, it doesn't feel okay there. Okay. So teacher training, there's a need for teacher training on how to include students in classes where their home language is not Turkish. As I said before, all the 3 instructors emphasize that they definitely need some in-service training to teach these students, because the medium of instruction is Turkish. And these students the majority are lost. All right. And also, there's need for training and support of Syrian volunteer teachers in temporary education centers. These are really, these needs they directly talk to my observation. So one of the parents, the mother was a teacher she was an 18-year teacher of primary education. She taught for 18 years in Syria, and then she came here, she had no job. And she said, it is really hard to explain my feelings. I have no students. I used to teach, I taught, for 18 years, and now I have no students. Her eyes were watery when she was talking to me. She was talking in Arabic because I had a translator, and that translator helped me to kind of understand what she was talking about. So, that talk was really, really painful. Yeah, Denise, we can move on. All right, so in Turkey, we have opportunities. So there are temporary education centers, and in these centers, students receive the Syrian curriculum, and most of the Syrian teachers are employed. So we can do something similar. We can increase the number of these centers to have these students receive education. So there is a non-governmental organization called Yuva. So they provide courses in Turkish. They also do some standardized exams. So I guess they were talking to the Minister of Education to cooperate and provide education for the refugee students, like Turkish courses, so that these students can learn the language and be part of the community. And also we have paper airplanes. So they match, it's something it's located in the United States, right, in it, Denise? So there are...
I can talk about it.
Thank you.
So paper airplanes, again, non-profit organization, they pair native speakers of English with Syrian refugees in Turkey. And they teach them, so this is kind of like one-on-one tutoring for English, but they also have classes for Turkish as well. So as a pre-service teacher, if you are interested, you can volunteer to work with them, because it's online. So you don't go anywhere. You just like do what we do here.
Okay, thank you. Also, there are national and international guidelines that we can refer to provide sound and productive education for these students. And also, it is very important we provide in-service training specifically designed for teachers who teach refugee students in their regular classrooms, because this is one of the major points, one of the major needs mentioned by the majority of instructors. Okay. So there's a song by the Beatles. We can work it out. So I just want you to go through the lines and then share your opinions with me about the song. Are you done? So I just want to hear your comments on the song. What do you understand from this song? And do you agree or disagree? If yes, why? If no, why?
May I start?
Please.
I think that I agree, firstly, and also I think that the most important thing in the world is friendship. So also I agree that life is really short, so we should respect each other, and also we should love each other.
Yeah, life is short, as said in the lyrics. What else? Nazan, I guess you are speaking and you have to unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Yes, now? Okay. So maybe it emphasizes the universality of language. If we try to really understand each other, if we understand our problems, each other's problems, not just ourselves, and try to solve it, there would be any problem actually. But we are a bit selfish. But if we are trying to understand, collaborate, and try to solve it, really the world will be a happier place to live.
100% agreed. Right, any more comments?
Yes, thank you.
So as Joel said, well, it is like, I guess there would be no one who doesn't agree with the lyrics of that song, because like, as you said, the life is short. Of course we have differences, but it's important that we welcome our differences. We built at the very beginning of
We
this,
embrace the differences.
we had this activity of paper folding. So we came up with different things because we had our own understandings of things, but the instructions were the same. So we have to, have this horizon and then, allow different voices into this world and also into our world, because our truth might not be the only truth that we have. This song is also sung by an Israeli and Palestinian singers. So, Dennis, do we have time to listen to the song? Dennis, I'd like to say something. I guess somebody's mic is on. I hear my voice back. So I will be very happy if you unmute your microphones so that we don't hear my voice.
Okay.
Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can't go on? While you see it your way, run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone. We can work it out. We can work it out. Think of what you're saying. You get it wrong and still you think that it's alright. Think of what I'm saying. We can work it out and get it straight. Don't say goodnight. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again. Try to see it my way, only time will tell if I am right or I am wrong. While you see it your way, there's a chance that we might fall apart before too long. We can work it out. We can work it out. Life is very short and there's no time for fussing and fighting, my friend. I have always thought that it's a crime, so I will ask you once again.
So as you can see, singers use their own art to address, to address these issues and bring that issue into their work. And artists obviously have their own ways to bring this social justice issue into their own work. So the question is, why not English language teachers or language teachers? What can we do about it? Now I'm going to leave the stage to Dennis.
So what is peace building for you? What do you think it? Yes, Nazan.
May I start? Maybe for me, it is the teachers, or when we are thinking about classroom environment, the teachers' deliberate actions to create environment where everyone is equal, nobody seeing the differences as something bad. Everybody embraces the difference positively, and we create a harmonious atmosphere in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? So peace building is it refers to the process of establishing peaceful relationships in whatever context we have. So like in language education, it's the language classrooms. So one thing that's important is that peace is created through the work of individuals. So that means that we cannot expect peace to happen in the world on its own. no, we need to do something. Like it's our responsibility to engage in peace building. So if you think about your lives, what do you do to peace build or build peace? Not much, I guess. Yeah. But yeah. So it's you know, peace building itself is about cultivating empathy and understanding the lived experience of those who are different from us. So this is the key of peace building. How do we get to know the other person without judging them? Again, going back to, like, you know, paper folding activity, how do we understand that the differences are not because, like, you know, the other person is bad or deficient, but just different. Like everybody comes from a different background. So like the way we perceive things, the way we understand things, the way we react to things will be different. We cannot assume everybody will act the same or react the same or be the same. So in language classrooms, peace building concepts and skills include communicating effectively. So this is really important because this is the core of language teaching, right? Like we teach language for communication. So if you're wondering, okay, like what does peace building have to do with language instruction? It's all about communication. It's all about how we interact with the other person. So we can cultivate peace building in the classroom by, you know, using negotiation to manage disagreements and conflicts. And I'll talk about this in a little bit as well, because, you know, I think our tendency in any kind of classroom is to avoid conflicts, to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody's happy, and, you know, and we ignore or try not to go into any controversial subject because we don't want conflict. But actually conflicts are healthy, and I'll say more. So another aspect of peace building is reducing prejudice and violence. This might be, you know, bullying, or it could be more like, you know, physical violence as well, or psychological violence sometimes. And building relationships, forgiveness, and reconciliation. So this is really important as well. And I think we do this, like, you know, like we have this concept, like, you know, like küsmek, or like if somebody doesn't do something for us, like even with the kids, I'm trying not to do the same with my nephew, because, like, you know, if he doesn't do something that I want him to do, like, you know, we have a tendency to say, oh, if you don't do this, you know, I'll be upset, I'll be cross. But it's wrong, because that means that, like, you know, we can use it as a card when somebody doesn't do something that we actually want. It's not about what we want, it's about, you know, negotiation of, like, you know, these things, like, you know, yeah, we can't always get what we want. So that's, I think that's something really important to teach. And also another aspect of peace building is understanding how we can contribute to peace building individually and collectively. And this is why, you know, we are doing these webinars to show you ways of integrating peace building in your classroom, but you also do your own social justice projects, because that's really important. You need to be able to connect the things that you have learned in this class to the community, so that you can understand that, you know, yes, we can take individual steps, but we should also be taking collective steps. The challenges are, I want to ask you before moving forward, have you ever heard of PARSNIP? It's an acronym. So each letter stands for something. No? So publishers, textbook companies avoid controversial issues to ensure market. Have you ever seen like politics in any course book? Or have you seen religion? Have you seen pork? Probably not, because, you know, this is what Parsnip stands for. No politics, no alcohol, no religion, no sex, no narcotics, no isms, like is in no racism or socialism or other kinds of isms, and no pork for the Muslim countries. Because like textbook companies, they are profit-making companies. They want to sell as many books and materials that go with the books as much as possible. So this is their concern. It's not their concern to save the world or build peace or address social justice issues. It's their concern how much do I get to charge for this particular book, or how many books do I sell in this country. So they avoid anything that can be considered taboo or controversial. Then what leads us is this women's magazine world of EFLE's course materials. Everybody's healthy, happy, mostly white, no one is poor, no one is ill, no one is old. And I call it the Disney world of language textbooks. And then the other challenge is that some teachers think they address these issues or they contribute to world peace by teaching culture or guiding their students to Erasmus or traveling, work and travel, and etc. But do you think this is enough?
Yes.
It's enough. You did no, Fahri. Why?
I don't think it's enough because, how can I say?
Can you talk closer to the microphone?
Okay, I don't think that's enough because you can't do the things you said with these, like work and travel or other such things. You need more powerful things.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we teach culture, for instance, teaching about Eiffel Tower or Big Bang is not teaching culture. It's a very, I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about this, but it's a tourist approach to multicultural or multilingual education. You're just you're doing what the textbook companies are doing. You're not doing anything different. Or facilitating travel. Do you facilitate travel to South Africa or South America, or you just tell them to go and visit London or New York? So we need to do, yes, as Fahri said, we need to do more than that. We need to incorporate peace building knowledge, skills, and values in our courses. So I'll give you a couple of principles to highlight how. So the first one is emphasizing multiple perspectives. So we need to have conversations about difficult topics to experience and learn different perspectives. So instead of avoiding these taboo subjects, we should address them in the class, because when students go out to the world, they will see Syrian immigrants. They will see if, for instance, in the context of the States, racism is a very taboo subject. People don't want to talk about racism because they don't want to be considered racist, and they don't want to have any kind of racist conversations or conversations on racism in the States, because they don't know how to handle it. But the research shows that children start developing racist beliefs as young as they are 6 months. 6 months. Can you imagine that at the age of 6 months, they can distinguish between a white and a black person, and they can smile at the white person, but not so much at the black one, because they don't see any black people in their environment. So they start developing racist beliefs. We assume that we shouldn't talk about these in our classrooms. We just think really naive of our kids, because they know much better. They can handle these. So cultivation of the capacity to listen to one another and to really hear what the other person has to say. So this is like, what the song actually told, right? Like, like we can work it out. We need to talk about it. Like we don't need to be the same. We can disagree, but we need to understand each other. I had a friend in high school, and she's still a friend. And we used to argue a lot, like constantly, because we had diverse political beliefs. But we were best friends. Like other than our political beliefs, we are still best friends. But like we argued, we listened to each other, and we couldn't find common ground. Like we didn't try to change each other's minds, but we understood our perspectives. So disagreements are healthy, and they are natural. You cannot simply agree with everyone all the time. That's not a realistic expectation. So we need to use disagreements. Remember, like I said, the negotiation of conflict. So clarifying one's own perspective. Do we teach our students, do we give them the chance to have a voice in something, to explain their perspective? We're not even teaching them to explain themselves, and then in relation to that, to be able to hear what the other person is truly saying. So you might be wondering what happens when both sides are right. Going back to the Syrian refugee crisis, there are lots of racist activities in Turkey, and I didn't share it here, but I don't know if you saw it. There was a bakery in Kocaeli, and they wrote on their window, "Poğaça askere bedava." If you are Turkish, 1 TL. If you are Syrian, 5 TL. Like this is racism. Like very outrageous. You cannot discriminate. So there is very strong racist beliefs against Syrians in Turkey. But and everybody is upset with the government and upset with the refugees, but no one is really trying to see the other's perspective. Like there is a war in Syria. I have a student here. She's Syrian, and she's stuck here because she cannot go back to Syria because of the travel ban. So if she goes, she cannot come back. So she hasn't seen her family in years, like 4 years, and they cannot come here because of the travel ban. And she's hoping that they will survive. So how often are we aware of these issues? Have you ever talked to a Syrian person, and do you know what these people are going through? What would happen if it was us? Where would we go? So it's, yes, we have challenges, we have problems in Turkey. We're struggling to accommodate them, and we're struggling to live together, but we need to find a way to live together, because there's no other way.
It is just to support what you have said. Something.
Yes.
Yeah. During my observation, I talked to the parents of the third grade student, and I asked how they ended up here, and the mother was the 18-year teacher. She was teaching in her country, and then she was threatened many times to leave her job, but she didn't. And then her elder son was kidnapped, and he was released 1 or 2 months later with a broken leg. And then a few weeks later, a car with bombs exploded close to their house, and the student that I observed in the classroom lost his one of eyes. So he couldn't see. He had just one eye. It was really painful for me to listen to the story.
I mean, who would want to leave their country and go live like this in another country? So that, trust me, they don't want to be in Turkey either. But this is what the conditions require. So
right. And in Syria, back in Syria, they had 2 stores where they used to sell clothes, and they had different, things to make money. And they said they were really good in Syria in terms of their financial situation. So, but the conditions, the circumstances forced them to end up here.
The other principle is to teach dialogue, and this is the opposite of, I think, what we are teaching in our classrooms. We teach, right, like we love debates. I remember like having a kalem mi üstündür, kılıç mı üstündür kind of debate. So, but the debate always is problematic because it concludes with a winner. So in the case of, like kalem versus like the pencil versus the sword, or any kind of debate, like they're not a winner. And the other thing is that there needs to be refuting of each other's arguments, right? Like kind of like the argumentative essay, the last paragraph should be a rebuttal, like refuting the other's perspectives. But instead of debate, we should teach them dialogues. Like dialogue doesn't assume like a winner or a loser. So there is no labeling. And also it involves listening to enhance one's understanding of a topic and to hear the speaker's intended meaning. So we should cultivate skills of dialogue rather than debate. Another principle is engaging students in interactive lessons using creativity, like role plays. It's really good. So give them like, 2 different contexts and tell them, okay, you're the Syrian refugees, you're the Turkish people. Talk to each other, like try to find, negotiate. What does each group want? Like, how can you like meet somewhere in the middle? So, you can also do small group or large group discussions. The idea is to make the abstract concrete. It's like everybody sees the Syrian war as the problem of Syrian people. It's not their problem only. It's like it's all of our, like we live in the same world. Like one thing that happens, I think we talked about this in environmental justice as well. Like one country's policies influence all the other countries. So like, if we make the abstract concrete, then the students can make decisions about how they can react when faced with conflict, and and how they can resolve conflicts at an interpersonal level. I want to show you something to give you an idea of how you integrate these topics into the language classroom. So going back to Parsnip, the textbooks, I'm sure you have seen similar chapters in language textbooks. Royal family. Textbook companies love the royal family. Again, this is very tourist approach to language teaching. So this is the royal wedding, Prince William and Kate Middleton. And, I think we looked at this chapter during the LGBTQ week. Yeah, remember the Elton John. So let's say you're studying this book. How would you connect this to immigration or peace building? No ideas? Okay, I'll show you one other thing. So this is your textbook. What happened last year, as I was teaching, the course, we saw this news article. Princess Charlotte, so this is their baby daughter. Princess Charlotte can speak 2 languages and she's only 2 years old. This little princess. And apparently she's learning Spanish from her Spanish nanny. What do you think about this? Now, how can you connect your chapter, going back to this, to immigration and peace building? What do you think about the news? Are you fascinated by it?
I would prefer to see a refugee student who can speak different languages rather than somebody from the royal family. And, you know, it is okay to see something like this, but I would prefer a refugee student who is bilingual or multilingual, you know.
Do you think, like, you know, the fact that she speaks both Spanish and English is like has value, is interesting? I have neighbors next door, they speak 3 languages. Like, you know, one of them is 2, the other one is 4. They speak Catalan, Spanish, and English. So this is like, you know, somebody like from a privileged background speaking 2 languages is just like, you know, like if she were to speak 10 languages, I would be like, yes, like that's fascinating. But like 2 languages is a bit actually lame. There are so many immigrants who are multilingual. So this is like, you know, this is how you can find a point of entry. The idea is that you need to follow the news, the world news really carefully.
Yes.
Out there, connect the news to your chapter, and then from there, you know, relate it to more serious concepts. So you can start with the royal family. You can discuss this news that your daughter after the wedding, and she speaks 2 languages, and then, you know, go from there and say who else speaks, you know, 2 languages, at least 2 languages or 3 languages. Immigrants, let's talk about immigrants, and let's talk about immigration. Okay, so the other principle is sharing real stories. We shared lots of real stories today to illustrate the gravity of the situation, the importance of, you know, peace building. So you can also do the same. You can invite, you know, people who have experienced marginalization, or like, you know, maybe like someone who is an asylum seeker, and then you can, you know, like get your students to ask them questions. And again, the idea is to make the concepts, the abstract more concrete, and also to cultivate empathy. The last point, and this is very important, is that we cannot leave our students in despair. So this is very important. This is, you know, we talked about social justice, how like it's related to like, you know, social action. So we can talk about the problems in the world, but like, you know, so what, like, you know, where do we go from this? So it's really important to develop their capacity as peace builders. Any questions so far? Because we're going to move on to a different content related, but a bit different. So I want to make sure.
No, I don't.
Okay. Adnan, do you want to continue?
Apologies. So I just started speaking, but I didn't recognize. Okay. So we're going to focus on differentiated instruction before providing a definition to that particular pedagogical term. I will be very happy if you share your ideas about that concept, or have you ever heard this concept?
Yes, I have heard. As the name suggests, there is no a single or standard way to teach the students. We need to consider or take into consideration a number of factors, such as social backgrounds, the proficiency level of the students, their own skills, their own attitudes to language. So considering these issues, we should prepare our own activities and maybe assessment according to them.
Yeah. Any more ideas? All right. So, as you said, there is no formula or recipe that works for all learners in all times. There is no set of lesson plans or units that can engage the range of learning styles, approaches, and intelligences that are likely to gather in one classroom. So which basically means when we go into the classroom, we will have students who basically have different ways of learning and different rates of learning, and also bring different talents and interests into the classroom. So as teachers, our job is to kind of provide room for all these differences.
I'm Larry Filazzo, differentiating instruction.
Okay, and now we're going to watch a video about differentiated learning. So please pay close attention because there are some important terms that we're going to talk about as well.
Differentiating instruction. To some educators, it conjures visions of having to create a different lesson for every student in the room and long nights of planning and grading. That insanity is not what differentiation is all about. Differentiating instruction is really a way of thinking, not a pre-planned list of strategies. Oftentimes, it is making decisions in the moment based on this mindset. It's recognizing that, to paraphrase Rick Wormerly, fair doesn't always mean treating everyone equally. It's recognizing that all of our students bring different gifts and challenges, and that as educators, we need to recognize those differences and use our professional judgment to flexibly respond to them in our teaching. Carol Tomlinson talks about the ability to differentiate in 3 areas: content, process, and product. For content, student choice is one way we might differentiate, like allowing students to choose their research topics or essay prompts. As teachers, we need to keep our eyes on the prize. In other words, we have to keep asking ourselves, what are the main learning objectives? One day, my students were writing an argument essay about what would be the worst natural disaster to experience. John's head was down the desk. He was not doing anything. I knew that he was interested in football, so I told him that he could write an essay on why his favorite team was the best. He would still have to make an argument just about football instead of hurricanes or earthquakes. His eyes lit up. He got to work and wrote what his mother later told me was the first essay he had ever written in school. He had followed all the guidelines of a good argument essay. The prize, in this case, was learning to write an argument essay, not learning to write about natural disasters. To differentiate by process, teachers can change up how they group students. Sometimes a mixed ability group might work best, while sometimes it might be appropriate to have same ability groups. We might have an English proficient buddy work with an English language learner to help them out. During independent reading time in my early morning class several years ago, one student tended to fall asleep. I told him that if he wanted, he could go to the back and sit on a desk and read. Soon, several others joined him. A few days later, I saw another student dozing off. Before I could say anything, one of his classmates whispered to him, "Just go sit on a desk." Again, it's a matter of keeping our eyes on the prize. What are the learning objectives and what are the best roads to get there for different students? Teachers can also differentiate by the type of product students create. The major demonstration of learning doesn't always have to be an essay or a multiple choice test. One year I had a student who liked to doodle when other students or I were talking. I told her it was okay as long as she was doodling about the information we were discussing. She built on those doodles to create a final project that brilliantly and visually represented all the key points we had covered. When I give tests, I often give students an extra blank page where they can write anything else they remember about the topic being tested that they think is important. I often find the quality of thinking and writing better there than in response to my test questions. None of the differentiating strategies I've mentioned have created any extra work for me. They did require that I had relationships with my students to know their strengths, challenges, and interests. And I needed to demonstrate flexibility in my thinking. Making these strategies successful also required building a strong class culture so that some of the students were being treated differently and they understood why. And they understood that that was the only way to be truly fair. The ideas mentioned here are just a drop in the bucket. There are a zillion other ways we can support our students' gifts and challenges. We just need to keep our minds and ears open.
That was really effective. So I just want to pose a question. What words or phrases do you remember when you were watching, remember from the video that you watched? It doesn't have to be full sentences, just some words and phrases that you remember when after watching the video. When we say differentiated instruction, what comes to your mind?
Learning styles.
Learning styles. What else?
Interest.
Can you say that again?
Interests.
Interests, yes. I clearly remember these words: gifts and challenges, classroom culture, flexibility. So when we go into the classroom, as it is stated in the video, students bring gifts and challenges. So gifts are the strengths and challenges are somehow, they might be the weaknesses of our students. So, or it doesn't have to be their weaknesses, but the things that they bring into the classroom might create some clashes or conflicts in the classroom. And as teachers, our job is to help students utilize their gifts to overcome the challenges in the classroom. So in the video, there was this emphasis on 3 basic concepts: content, process, and product. So what do you understand when I say content? What could it be? What does it mean?
Content, the topics maybe?
Yeah, the topics. Can you elaborate it a little bit?
In each lesson, we have a special particular content that we need to teach the students. For example, in one lesson, friendship, in another lesson, nationality. So these are called maybe contents.
Exactly. So the content is about the curriculum that is delivered in the classroom and also the information that is learned by the students. So what about the process?
The strategies, the techniques, the methods that we are going to use in the lesson, and how we plan the stages of the lesson. In each lesson, we have specific steps.
Right. So basically, the content was related to the the question what, and process is
how.
The question how, exactly. So the techniques, strategies that we're going to apply in our classrooms to teach effectively. So what about product?
The results, the outcomes. What did the students learn actually?
Yes. So the products that our students have in their hands, or the takeaways that our students have at the end of the learning process. I mean, it doesn't, as it is stated in the video, let's focus on writing class. It doesn't have to be an essay. I mean, the product doesn't have to be an essay. It could be something different, but still focus on writing skills. And to enable that variety in the classroom, then as teachers, we have to be flexible enough and welcome the gifts and challenges that our students bring into the classroom and provide them the best, maybe the most appropriate content and the strategies and techniques to teach our students. All right, so that takes us to the next slide. And in this slide, we're going to focus on some scenarios. In these scenarios, Yes. All right. So in these scenarios, we're going to try to answer two different questions. The first question is like, the question, the task will focus on differentiating instruction or not. So you are going to read the scenarios to yourself and you're going to work in groups. So first you are going to read the scenarios and then decide and identify if differentiation takes place in terms of content, process, and product. If not, then how we can suggest ways to differentiate instruction in these particular scenarios. So we're going to get into groups and we're going to use the breakouts. I'm going to copy the link and I'm going to paste it into
I did it.
Oh, thank you, Dennis, Dan. So I'm going to create the breakouts and then we're going to work in groups. By the way, keep in mind when we are in the main room, we should have a speaker who would report back to the whole group. Okay.
The other thing is it might be good to open the link now, because I think once you are in your groups, you won't have access to the chat box.
Yeah, okay.
Sure, like, you know, yeah, get the link now and then go into your breakout groups.
Okay, thank you, Dennis, for that. So should I create the breakouts?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to create 3 different groups. Did you get the activity? Did you understand what we're going to do?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so you should open the link that Dennis shared with you. And when you open the link, you will see some items, some questions. And I would suggest you choose a writer for the group.
I am writing, yes.
Okay. So, by the way, we have 4 people in this group.
Yes,
I forgot that Merve and
yes. We are 2.
yeah, you are 2. So anyway, I think that won't be a problem. Okay, so we're going to open the link. Then we should choose a writer for the group, and the writer should take notes. The first question is about writing the members of the group. So we're going to write the members of the group, and then we will have the scenarios. We're going to read the scenarios and then answer 2 questions. Regarding each situation, each scenario, do we have differentiation or not? If we have differentiation, then is it about content, process, or product? If no, how are we going to differentiate that particular scenario? We're going to come up with some suggestions. Are we clear?
Yes.
Some reactions, please. Burak, are you okay? I cannot hear you.
Yes.
Great. Selçuk?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, go ahead. So who's the writer? Folks?
I'm using phone, so I cannot write, I think.
All right. So what about Merve? Okay. Do you mind speaking so that I can understand what you mean with this? Unmuted. Oh, it's unmuted, but I can't hear. Can you hear them?
No.
Me neither. Ladies, we cannot hear you.
Now?
Yes, we do.
Finally. We are writing.
Okay, great. So read the scenarios and then decide if there is, and then if yes.
Explain homework to all students in his class. He knows which home task will best help them understand and apply grammatical forms.
Brooke, are you able to read the scenarios, and Selçuk, you as well?
Yes.
I read them. First
Great.
one is not because he he doesn't give different chance to students.
So you said it doesn't have differentiation. So obviously, if it doesn't have, then you should come up with some suggestions to provide differentiation.
He presents different homework styles for different groups.
Mhm.
He he increases he can increase homework styles.
Okay.
It's because
So
there
I'm going to visit the other groups.
Pardon.
Let me read it one more time.
Okay.
It's an English language learners class, so
Yes.
for me, giving those students in something in their native language is not good because it's not Turkish lesson. So yes, it can be helpful, but yeah,
But think of it this way, you know, some students might have really low proficiency in the English language, so you know, this is giving students a chance to move at their own speed and pace, you know. So if it's like having hyperlink in a text, when you go online and you read something, if you need further information or would like to learn more about a concept, you click on it and it takes you to a different page. So I think it's similar to that. So I would say there is differentiation here, you know. So if you don't need help in your first language, you're good. You can just move fast.
I think the process is writing. Like the teacher does not let students to do their initial drafts in writing or in listening or in reading. So
But they allow them to do it in their first language.
so still isn't it the content?
So the content is the what we teach. And then how we teach the content is the process. So you write the second part, students have some
materials
and print resource materials. So this is content.
Mm-hmm.
But then the first sentence is where they practice the content. They write initial drafts in their first language. So like I'm telling you, you can write your progress report in Turkish or in English. So that's process differentiation.
Mm-hmm. I got it.
Can access the documents in Turkish or in English, and that's content. So there is both.
May I add something?
Yeah.
Using different materials or printables, can we say this process or content?
Content. So because if they are reading it to learn, that's content. Yeah. But let's say you use the materials as part of an activity. I think
it is still content.
Content, yeah.
Right. So if we consider process, it basically focuses on the tasks, the activities, how they are designed. For example, in the first part of the sentence, it says, well, they were allowed to use their native language. So that's a kind of strategy applied in the teaching process. So how it is done.
Yeah. Are you taking notes again, Nazan?
Yes, I have taken. For the second one.
Okay, let's move on to the third one.
I'm back.
And the last one, right? We are in the last one.
Wow,
Okay.
very fast.
I think it is differentiation because teacher ignores students' assessments.
No. So if you say if she ignores, then how can we speak of differentiation?
Yes.
No differentiation. Are you with me?
Yes.
If it is the same spelling list, that means there are no alternatives, which means some students might be really bad
Okay.
about the spelling of some words or letters. I don't know what they are.
Maybe different educational backgrounds.
Educational or linguistic backgrounds.
Right. Yeah. So which means the needs of students might differ, and she doesn't provide, she doesn't spare any room for that.
Suggestion.
All right. I would draw your attention to without checking the assessment results. That is your kind of departure point. So she doesn't check it and she assigns the same list. Maybe in the list there are some words or some utterances that some students are really good at and they don't need practice for that, but they need something different. So which means it is important that we go back and check their results. By the way, why am I suggesting? It is you.
Thank you for your contribution.
The teacher should pay attention to what?
Selçuk, are you there?
Yeah,
Great. Do you have any suggestions?
I agree with you.
We love you too. So what is the suggestion for this scenario?
Maybe the teacher should pay attention to assessment results first, and then she should give attention to the missing ones, mostly missing ones, or difficult ones, according to the result.
All right, she might create different lists.
Yes.
All right. All right. So when you feel ready, if you like, you can go back to the other scenarios and then check your answers. If you're not happy, you can just still have negotiation. I will go to the other groups and see if they're finished. Then I'll come back and let you know they're done and then go to the main room.
Okay.
Goodbye for now. Oh. So they're all gone. They're waiting for us.
Oh, okay.
So we're ladies, submit the form. So we're going back to the main room.
Okay.
Wow.
We had 2 or 3 days off.
Wow.
Snow cancellations, something that we have never seen in Trabzon, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, we're back.
Okay.
So if you're ready, we have 3 groups and each group has a speaker.
Okay.
So we're going to see the responses. So Dennis, do you mind sharing the Google Doc with us? I know. If you just
Why are you making it difficult for her?
I do.
Yeah, I know. Just a minute.
Okay, I think I know. Okay. I have it, do I?
You do, because you created it.
Why don't you start asking, and I'm sure they remember.
All right.
Yes.
So we're going to start with
Yes.
Burak, Merve, Selçuk,
Gökçe.
Gökçe.
Amen.
All right. So, and then because I know they have something written down, so they can start sharing, and then we will
It's a
be.
Google form.
Have you found? Okay. Just a minute.
And we can go question by question, and they can elicit the responses when I'm looking for it. Yeah. So why don't you ask about the first question?
Okay. All right. So the first scenario, I'm going to read a scenario out.
Yeah, I found
So,
it.
and then
Okay.
we can all remember the scenario.
Yeah.
It says, Mr. Owen assigns the same homework to all students in his class. He knows which home tasks will best help them understand and apply grammatical forms. The same homework to all students in his class. So is this, is there differentiation in this scenario or not? If there is yes, is it the content, excellent, process or product? And if no, how can we differentiate?
And the responses are now available.
Yeah, thank you, Amos.
I guess my group can start, right, Kadir?
We?
Nazan, yes?
I think there is no differentiation because the teacher, by giving the same homework, he expects the same results. But we said that there is no standard way to ensure that all the students have learned. So using similar tasks won't enable to product the same results, the similar results. So this is not differentiation actually.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments in relation to the first one?
So Gizem, Fahri, and Servet Hoca, what do you think about the first scenario?
Okay, there's no differentiation because the teacher gives the same homework for all students, and there's a problem with that. Some students can maybe not be interested in those topics.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, given the same homework, teacher can give opportunity to students to choose their homework. Homework is a way to show us who can do what, so we can understand what we should give to those students.
May I add?
Of course.
As a suggestion, we suggested that he should observe the students well, and formally and informally, and according to this, he should decide which types of tasks he should give.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so what about the other group? So there was Gökçe, Merve, Selçuk. What do you think about the first scenario? What would you add beyond what they have said?
There is no differentiation because he ignores multiple intelligence. He ignores individual differences. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we can move on to the next scenario. So the next scenario says, I'm a little lost. So it says, Mr. Rowles encourages English language learners to do initial drafts of writing in their first language, if that helps them express their ideas. He also ensures that as often as possible, students have access to some online or print resource materials in their first languages, so they can more readily understand and relate to important concepts. So we're going to continue with you in terms of responses. So we have Kadir and Nazan.
I think we can start with Gizem, Fahri, and
Okay.
Okay, there's differentiation in here. We can see that clearly. And differentiation in terms of process. The teacher gives students the opportunity that they can read and see something in their own native language, because seeing something in their native language can make students feel comfortable in the classroom. Knowing or reading, seeing something in different languages can cause fear in the students, because yes, you can see them, but you can't read them and you can't understand them. But if you see the product in your own language and you can understand, you can feel more comfortable.
Okay. What else other groups can add? Nazan, please.
We also said that he used differentiation because we said that he used different mediums or sources. For example, he uses principles and different materials. So he differentiated the content. So we can say that he also uses differentiation as well.
Mm-hmm. And your last group? Gökçe, Merve, Burak, Selçuk. Oh, we cannot hear you.
Is there anything you want to add?
Who?
The other group?
Last group, that was
Gökçe, Merve, Burak, Selçuk.
We cannot hear you.
So Burak, you might speak if you like.
Yeah. Do you?
Yes, no.
Yes, yes.
Actually, we said there is no differentiation here since the teacher chooses to speak in their first language, because there can be some refugees in the class, and so instead there should be second language.
But it says writing in their first language if that helps, which means they're not obliged to use just their first language. They're just given the alternative to work in a different language.
We misunderstood.
Does it make sense? Okay. All right. Thank you. I think we can move on to the next scenario, and we can go on with you if you like.
Yes, of course.
So Ms. Enrico offers students 2 or 3 options when it's time for them to develop a final project at the end of a unit. She bases the options on students' interests, so they have the chance to link what they have learned with something that seems important and relevant to them as individuals.
So there is differentiation. It's suitable, I think, we think, because there are options for homework and there are learning styles of students. So it's differentiation.
All right. So what about the other groups? Any more points to add?
We said that there is a difference. The differentiation takes place. May I go?
Please. Yeah, go on, please.
Initially, it seems there is no differentiation because in the first sentence it says he offers 2 or 3 options. This seems something like limited, but when we are going on reading the sentences, she bases the options on students' interests. So the options are created according to the students' attitudes, beliefs, and interests.
Yeah.
So I think he or she considers the students' opinions. So I think there is a differentiation.
Okay, thank you. And the last group, would you like to add something more? If you like, we can just go ahead, please.
More. Sorry to interrupt, but not something more. It's very clear that the differentiation in terms of products, she based options on students' interests. That's all.
All right, thank you. And our last scenario, Mrs. Vigens assigns students the same spelling lists without checking the assessment results because she assumes that all 3rd graders should work on list 3. So Fari, we're going to continue with your group and then move on to the others if they have more points to add.
Okay, seeing all students in the same level is a big mistake for a teacher because every student is unique. You can't compare them with one to another. Instead of this, we can assess the students to see where they are in the language, and not assuming that they're all same, they're all in the same level. After assessing the students, we can give them the exact level of their vocabulary. Like, okay, you need this and you need this.
Right.
They are not same.
Okay. What about other two groups? Do you have more to add to that?
Actually,
Please.
especially it says she assumes something that happens in theory without concrete tests and assessment types. How do you know the students know the topic? So without concrete observations, without looking to the process, you couldn't definitely know whether the students should work on this theory or not.
Yeah. And the last group, do you have more to add?
So she should give attention to the assessment results, and according to them, she should list the most difficult and missing parts, and then she should check their understanding, actually.
All right. Thank you. Great job, I guess. Thank you all. So we're ready to go on with the remaining part of the webinar, I mean our presentation. So Denise?
So this is, I want to ask you if you have any questions first about peace building and immigration. So this is your last blog post, and let me open the slide. And keeping in mind your practicum teaching context. So this could be, you know, if you are tutoring somewhere, it could be that, or it could be your practicum school. Which one of the activities in the link below, I'll show you the link, you would use for peace building, and explain why. So these are the activities here. This is the link that's posted in the Google Drive. We'll post the PowerPoint into the Drive, so you can, you know, reach the link very easily. So these are the activities. The paper folding one is the one that we worked on today. So look at these activities here and think about your, you know, target teaching context, the target students, and pick an activity and explain how you would use the activity and like why you would work on this particular activity. So we haven't indicated the deadline, but usually it's within 2 weeks. You also need to write your lesson plan for immigration and peace building. Speaking of lesson plans, Abe this morning sent me the updated list for those who have completed their lesson plans and who haven't yet. And we don't want to give names here, but you know who you are. And it's really important that before we, you know, do the symposium, like we start working on our projects, which you already have actually, that you complete those, because we need to submit these lesson plans and the blogs, I mean, they are online, to the embassy as deliverables. So that means that we did these webinars and the students contributed to this project through lesson plans and blogs. And we have done the webinars, but if you don't do the lesson plans, then like we will seem as if, like, you know, we haven't done our job. And that's problematic when we request funding for your travels, like, you know, when you receive your awards. Like, if you don't do what's necessary, how will we expect the embassy to support you for the TESOL award or the National Conference Award? So the other thing is, I was looking at our, yes. Can you see the Word document?
Yes.
So this is the timeline for your social responsibility project. And I've talked to a couple of you and you said you've been making progress. I don't think anyone submitted their budget. No, right? It's okay, like this, the budget it needs to be approved before you start spending. So like if you have started spending, that means you should have done this. If you will start spending, you have to make sure you do this in time. But what's more important here is the report that's coming up. But if, like Nazan said, she will start, you know, collecting data and asking survey, like, you know, giving surveys and interviews. We would like to see those before you go and apply. So the deadline for a progress report is to make sure you are, you know, making progress. But if you have made enough progress, you don't need to wait till the deadline. Like, send them to us. If you have a material that you are going to teach, don't go and teach, like, you know, without showing it to us. Like, we are here to give you feedback. We are here to improve your materials. So email them to us or post them in your Google Drive and then send us an email, say, I posted this, can you give feedback? And we'll get back to you as soon as possible. So this is really important. Like, you know, you can also contact your student mentors. You can also ask them questions, ask for, like, you know, you can send it to us and send it to them and get 2 sets of feedback. We are here to support you. So don't, try to do things on your own, because you want to have a really good project. I'm sure you can do really well on your own, but we want to support you, and we want to make sure you are on the right track. Any questions? Anything that you want to say, Servet Hocam or Adnan Hocam, in relation to this?
No.
Yeah, we have changed things a bit this year with the symposium. There will be, I mean, you haven't seen the symposium last year, but it was only a very small group. It was only the project participants presented. This year, it's organized as a proper conference. There will be people coming. There will be people coming from different universities, like, you know, it could be professors or it could be teachers presenting along with you. So you want to make sure that your projects are really, really good, better than last year's. That's what we hope for. Okay. Okay, so there are a couple of slides here. Important organizations, classroom resources, and there are several sample lesson plans here and list of references. And I think more is posted into your Google Drive. Any questions before this is our last webinar. We won't have a chance to meet you or see you unless you want to meet with us about your projects or anything else. But this is the last time we all get together as a group, and we'll see you in Sinop. Do you have the dates for the symposium?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, right? Because we told you during the workshop, right?
And it's also posted on the website of the project.
Yeah, check out our project website now and then. We have updates. We don't have specific updates to you, but like, you know, general updates for the public. But let us know if you have any questions. And yeah.
Then it's just one point, because it's like almost March, and then we have March and April, and then it's May. So it's like 2 months to the symposium. So which means basically at the beginning of May, we should almost be done with our projects, because we're going to kind of, you know, prepare our presentations, put our materials together, copy the things. That will take time. So March and April will be our application period. So it is important that if you don't have a project in your mind yet, or if you think that my project is not manageable, please do share it with us as soon as possible, and we can, you know, kind of find a way to together and then decide on something, or if you have your project topic decided, it's right kind of decided, but you might have some questions or doubts with some parts of the project. So please do not hesitate to contact.
Yeah.
More or less the things that you have just mentioned.
Do you add this line here, or I don't know?
You.
Okay. Yeah, my computer's going crazy. So if you come to this year, especially for those who didn't come to the workshop, in workshop documents, you have the timeline for the project. So your deadline to finish everything is April 17th. So it's actually like, less than 2 months. And then the rest is, just like figuring out your products, your deliverables, your presentation, and etc. So yeah, send us your budget and progress reports. I wouldn't wait till March 15. Do those before you actually start doing the project, and see all the information is present here, what to include in the first report, the second report, the final document, and the symposium presentation. Okay, so if there are no further questions, we can conclude our webinar here, and we'll see you all in May.